Assalamu alaikum. So we spoke earlier this week, and we had a very interesting conversation. I think that we're done. Okay. Now we can go to...
We can sing now.
Now we have the guitars and we have all the instruments. But since we spoke, I've been thinking, I was okay, Hamza is a peace activist. Okay, so that's how we're going to introduce him. And then I said, what am I? Like and then I wasn't sure, we might discuss that. You might help me realize who I am. But I thought it would be very interesting because I've been trying to think, what does it mean to be a peace activist? Is the same thing as being a pacifist or not? And who are you? Who and what brought you to this place? And besides those two questions, Baruch haba, welcome to Shir Hadash. We are glad to have you here. And I will say, Hamze is a peace activist, for real. And it is a pleasure to have him at Shir Hadash. It's a privilege to be able to come in touch with people and narratives that are not necessarily those that we are exposed to more often. And it is a privilege for us that you want to share who you are, what you do, and your narrative with us. So, you go ahead.
Thank you, Rabbi Nico. And thanks for inviting me. It's really a privilege to be here. I don't take it for granted after all the atrocities we have seen in this conflict in general and the past 15 months that a Palestinian come and stand here. That's a dream for me. That's what I hope each interaction between a Jew and a Palestinian will look like. It's not the case, but I'm trying here to break the ice. So my name is Hamze Awawde. I was born in the southwest of Hebron, in the West Bank, in a town called Dura. I come from a big family. We were 8 siblings, living in a neighborhood with relatives, cousins, uncles, aunts. I come from a family that was very much involved in the Palestinian national movement from the beginning. And quite frankly, they were involved in the military side, not in the political side. So I came to this life with the pressure that you should know and you should, because every kid and everyone, oh, you're the grandson of this guy, you know, your grandfather was hero, he did this, did that. So you grew up, always thinking about the conflict. And in the West Bank, you know, the conflict is pretty much there. I grew up through many stages. I was, at the beginning of my life, very scared from the word Jew. My nightmares were about Jews killing me. Just because, as a child, what you know, when they tell you big stuff, you make them in this very simplified interpretation and you internalize them. But luckily, there was the Oslo Agreement, and things cooled down a little bit, and there was ease of tension, change of scenes. I remember, you know, we started going to school trips, which was never the case. People start buying new cars, new houses, festivals, fun. And this really, and as a child, relieved my sense of existential fear from Jews. When the Second Intifada started, I was a teenager, so more mature and more able to understand things. I wasn't very convinced in a rational sense that violence is the answer. Just from calculation, like, you know, you kill them, they kill you, like, how this will end. Like, it was not rational for me, and this really not because I was humanizing Jews, or I was, no, just like from my own critical thinking. I was very upset about the Palestinian Authority because they didn't also bring us the independence and the end of the occupation, the corruption, and all of that. And I was lost, honestly, for a long time, until I went to university and I discovered through internet that there's also a path of co-liberation, co-resistance, negotiation, all of these things that actually no one teach nowadays. Like these things, like special kind of people get access and exposure to stories in the history of people coming to common sense together, even after a lot of bloodshed and conflict. So for me, being peace activist means living in the reality, loving yourself, loving your future. It's not something super fancy. You don't need special education about it. There's some people who are moved by their fear. There's some people who are moved by ideology. So not everyone who is doing destruction in this world is ideological about it. Some people just never been exposed. Like my grandfather, he was a shepherd. He was illiterate. He was in the mountains of Hebron. He saw the conflict in a certain way based on his own vision. I have a different experience. So when I came out as someone who proudly speaks to Israelis and Jews and Palestinians and anyone who would discuss with me the conflict, that there's only one way forward: mutual recognition, coexistence, 2 states, 5 states, 3 states, I don't care. But the people have to live in a way where their existence is not threatened, where their rights are protected by laws and by the governments that governs them and by the structures that governs them. And I believe until we reach there, no one is relaxed and no one is fine. So people will tell me, like, why you are not like your grandfather? So I would tell them, I was not born where my grandfather was born. I was not educated the way he was educated. I was exposed differently than what he was exposed. And also, you know, we don't live in the 1940s and 30s anymore. We live in a time where you can follow a celebrity, I don't know, in Brazil while you are in China. It's a different world. It will be ridiculous that I'm a copy of my grandfather. It just doesn't make any sense. Doesn't make me a hero to do that. And have met many people in my life, Israelis and Palestinians, who don't subscribe what's going on, and they always were, when we sit and have a drink together or discuss things together and the news and so on, they would tell me, they're crazy people fighting, and what we have to do with this? Why I'm supposed to be part of this when I don't agree with the agenda of our leaders and their leaders? And it's true. And we don't have many ways to express our own agenda as people who are not ideological. I mean, if you are ideological, Messianic, or Muslim Brotherhood, maybe what happened is not too much bad for you because it's part of your prophecy. But if you don't subscribe to these ideologies, then you are lonely. And in front of the world, you are one of them. So no one distinguished. In October 7, they didn't distinguish between who's left or right, and the same in Gaza. No one distinguished. So it's a tragedy that needs people to redefine how they look at this conflict and how they look at each other.
I'm questioning myself if I should follow up and ask you about what you just said, or try to go into a different topic, and so we'll do both. So you and I have spoken about October 7th, and you just said that in October 7th there weren't distinctions, and the same thing is in Gaza. Do you want to expand on what you mean by that?
Yeah, totally. Actually, when October 7th happened, I was in Dura, which is really very close to Gaza. It's in the south of the West Bank and the west. So I woke up on the sounds of the rockets. And I was there with my son visiting my mom. It was the first night my son sleeps at my mom's house ever. And I had to wake him up to escape to Ramallah. And I was so worried because I know who lives there. And eventually I know 7 Israelis who were killed that day. And Naama Levi was a student of mine when I was running Jewish-Palestinian teenager dialogue groups. So for me, it was a tragedy. I mean, you don't need to tell me what's the nationality. There are people living there, woke up in the morning. It's like it could happen anywhere, but you wake up in the morning and you have to face such a situation. It's shameful. I was ashamed. And by the way, I'm not Zionist. I do not excuse many of the atrocities Israel does, but that's not the point. The point, we can't do that. There's no excuse to do that. And I knew what will be the reaction, because I talk to Israelis every day. I know the Israeli society. I know what they are going through. I know how the paradigms that exist there. It's not much better than our side. And I know the people who think like me in both sides will not be allowed to say anything or influence whatever is happening. And the most radicals will try their chance to give people big objectives that are unrealistic. That's why many people from army and from Mossad and from armed resistance went to peace, because they discovered there's no military solution to this conflict. So I knew there will be a lot of killing, but eventually we will be in the same situation, just maybe worse. But there's nothing in the military you can change, just more suffering and more destruction. So that day I was so quick to decide to leave the West Bank. I took my son, went back to Ramallah, took my stuff. The day after, I went to Italy, because it reminded me of each time we have war, just everything is on fire, and people more traumatized and more hurt and more scared, to come to a ceasefire and a status quo that will produce another crisis. And I didn't want this to myself and my son. So I went to Italy without hope. I was honestly telling myself, I don't want to hear anything about this anymore. I want to go to Italy and pretend I don't come from there. But then you look at the world, it's not only Palestine and Israel, it's happening everywhere. And the moment I was in Italy, I have heard the most outrageous things from so-called pro-Palestine, so-called pro-Israel. And they said, maybe I have responsibility to say what I know. and since then, I'm back to say the things. Maybe it's not very attractive to say that there's no military solution, that Jews and Palestinians are there to stay, that regardless what's your narrative about the past, it's irreversible. Nothing happened until this moment can be changed. And let's agree about which future we want, not which past we didn't want, basically. So October 7th is the lowest point we have reached. It radicalized people on both sides, and any psychologist will excuse the people. I mean, in the moment of existential crisis, people are either fight or flight. And I really excuse Israelis and Palestinians in these moments, whatever they say. I mean, normal people, not leaders and so on. Whatever they say, because they're not fine. What happened is beyond any comprehension. We watched it from far. I watched it from far except the first day. And it has changed who I am. So imagine the people who lived it firsthand. But I blame the people outside, who their job is to be the firefighter, not the fire, not the people who make fire and increase the fire. And they acted as if they are the victims, as if they are the one who has to lose their mind, which complicates the situation there. We need, people there need the adults, the people who are fine, tell them, well, there's tomorrow, relax, let's think about it, let's talk about it. Not to push them to the maximalist, not to shame them when they speak differently, you know? So.
We had a conversation, we spoke about your experience in American campuses and how that behavior affected the Palestinian narrative and also the experience of Jews here. There's something about what the feeling of pain allows us to do. When you are in pain, what are you allowed to do? And for how long, if you are allowed to do anything with that pain, for how long you can hold on to that. One of the discussions that I think the Israeli right is having quite a bit lately is how great it was that the proposal that was on the government's table in May wasn't accepted by the Israeli government. And the reason for that, or the reason that this group finds, is that it allowed the Israeli government to send the army to Lebanon and to Syria and to attack Iran and to basically weaken all our enemies. And the outcome of that is that we are in a bigger power or in a better power position in order to move forward. And maybe without October 7th, or maybe by accepting the deal that the Biden's administration had in the table, we wouldn't have been able to do that, and people are safer today. And maybe safety is actually something that helps for the making of peace. So my mom used to say, my mom had a bunch of slogans. This wasn't her best, in my opinion, but she used to say this, that if you want peace, you need to get ready for war. And so I ask you if there's any difference between being a peace activist and a pacifist. And so I ask you again, and I ask you, like, what do we do with the pain? And how much or how far are we allowed to go with that, or how we channel it?
That's a very good question. You know, people have differences. Some people, even in the worst crisis, they're able to stay calm and they're able to control themselves. Some people go crazy for 3 minutes and some people go crazy forever. Unfortunately, in the terms of Iran and Hezbollah and Hamas and the Syrian regime, these actors exploit the Palestinian cause. Iran is no friend to the Palestinian people. This is something the Palestinian people, unless you are Hamas, know very well. They always say, yeah, we are victim of two powers in the region trying to fight each other. So I always tried to give the Palestinian card to people like us because we are more honest on helping Palestinians than Iran. And we should, in my opinion, all the people who believe in liberal democratic humanity, communal humanity, and all the people who believe in this framework, not power and control, should be the loudest speakers for the Palestinian humanity, not Hamas, not leaders, whatever, but the Palestinian humanity. So we take this card away from this actor. Hezbollah main goal is to take over Lebanon, not take over Jerusalem. But they have to give their desire to control Lebanon, very multicultural, multi-sects, and they are one sect want to take over, a national sense. The Syrian regime, all they cared about is to control the Syrians, and you know, they named the place where they used to torture people Palestine, to give it moral authority, you know. And most of the people who died there, Syrians first and second Palestinians, you know. Iran, I mean, Iran is no friends to the Arabs and the Middle East, what they have done in Syria, what they have done in Iraq. So we all know this. The problem that our side has to be smarter in exposing them that, when we don't talk about Palestine, there's no vacuum. When we don't talk about Palestine, people like me and you, will come someone who's radically left and take over the cause. Will come someone who is Islamist and take over the cause, because there's no vacuum in nature. Everything is felt. Is Israel today safer than the past? Ideally, the security experts should answer this question. I don't believe so. I don't believe so, because organizations like Hamas and like Hezbollah, so Iran is fine, still a country that has nuclear program, has resources, can adapt, can learn. We don't know how true is the narrative that they destroyed all the Air Force defense system. But anyway, in a couple of months, they can catch up. They can find a new strategy. For example, the reason that they supported Hezbollah and Hamas and the Syrian regime is to protect their nuclear program. And it was after the Iraqi war. So they understood that for their strategy, they have to create these militias so the Israel and the West are busy away with these small actors who is cheap to fund. I mean, what they give Hamas and Hezbollah is nothing compared to have a war inside Iran. Hezbollah is already recovering. Hamas, we have seen in the last days that they still exist in Gaza. They're still able, because the problem is not military. The problem is political. And these groups, in their nature, they're not a state. It's not like with Saddam Hussein regime, you enter Baghdad, he's over, and his regime is history. These are dynamic groups that, as long as the environment is ripe, they don't need much to recreate themselves. So if it was worth it or not, I think it was not. I think anyway, they could have had ceasefire with Gaza. As many Israeli members of the coalition or ex-members of the coalition said a long time ago, we achieved what we could achieve in Gaza. Let's take the hostages out through a deal. Let's think about the day after. I mean, Israel would have been safer if it had a plan for the day after, that we are not now stuck with Hamas. So I'm not sure if it's safer now. And I'm not pacifist, by the way. I'm a critical thinker, because nothing happened here is original. It's like the repetition of every time, but with higher intensity. Nothing was original about this war, if it's not just the bigger scale. Like, leaders of Hamas have been killed since I was born 10 times. Like,
more than 10.
Maybe more than that. So why this time these leaders will not be replaceable as long as we have the same issues?
You said in some other conversation that you had that I watched online, and I also heard Maoz Inon saying this, that you can forgive for the past, but you can't forgive for the future. And so for the future, we have the ability to transform and to change things right now. And for that, maybe one of the formulas to overcome hatred and anger is to have a vision. I was listening to Ambassador, the non-Israeli ambassador in the UN, who I will disclose is not my favorite political figure. But sometimes there are statements that are remarkable, and he asked the representative from the Palestinian Authority that was there, what is the vision that the Palestinian Authority has for the future? He said, well, if we are going to move forward, fine, what's your vision? He wanted to show a point, and the point that he wanted to show was there is no vision, and the only vision that you have is the elimination of the state of Israel. And that, of course, is a narrative that exists in Israel for many years, which is the narrative of there is no partner, have nobody to talk to. And look, Hamas did the atrocities of October 7th and then perpetrated those atrocities by means of holding our people captive. And you could say, well, Hamas did that because the Palestinian, because they are set aside, because they are disconnected, and they were strengthened by the Israeli government, by the right that's been sitting there for years. And the right says, you cannot give any power to a Palestinian authority. They are as problematic as Hamas. That's despite the security collaboration that exists since Oslo. So in this situation in which many people in the Israeli society see the Palestinian people as a range of impossibility, and we don't hear a vision that actually emerges from Palestinian leaders. What do we do with that? And one more thing, the Palestinian representative did not answer.
First of all, in practice, Hamas and Netanyahu were partners. Were partners, not only recently, over the years. The way Israel worked so hard to defund the Palestinian Authority, the Palestinian Authority have not been able to pay full salaries since 2019. Hamas paid salaries during this war. Like, how is it possible that an entity that many in Israel say is as bad as Hamas because they are national, they are not, like, the Palestinian Authority stands for two-state solution, recognized Israel officially in writing. That is as bad as someone who say for religious reasons Israel should not exist and this land is all Palestine and it's Islamic. It's not equal. There is a spectrum. Life is a spectrum. Life is a spectrum, and we are disparate. We're not picky. I mean, if we are picky about partners, then I would have to order my partner online in 3D, you know? Like, we have to deal what we have. And you look for the best option, but the issue is not this, it was not the excuse. Why they trust the generals and the officers and the soldiers and the Shem Bet and trust their counterparts in Ramallah on very critical life issues. And each time Israeli civilians entered Ramallah by mistake, or Nablus, or Hebron, even during this war, the Palestinian police was going there to secure them, hand them to the... This is equal to Hamas, who kidnap and do all these atrocities. So we have to challenge these narratives. And these narratives from the political elite in Israel is because they want to keep the status quo. The Israelis believe it because they're traumatized. And like, being traumatized is not it's not like their fault, but they have to get over it eventually because we have to move forward. But as the leaders, they know it's not true. I mean, Gantz met secretly with Abbas in the past, like, so many times, and gave him a gift and took a bottle of olive oil. Is the same like Sinwar? It's not, and you are shooting yourself in the feet when you say, no, they're all the same, especially that you don't have any other option, you know? And then on my side, they say the same. They say all of the Israelis want greater Israel. They want to remove Palestinians and bring settlers from all over the world, and you cannot trust them, and they are all one, and they don't see our humanity. And there's also narratives that has to be challenged. It is true that there is Smotrich, Ben Gvir, but there is also in the spectrum people who you can have certain things worked out with them, you know? But we can't say we don't have partner because, I mean, let's say we don't have partner. Let's invent one. you know.
In Israel, people speak about the conception. And the conception was, you will never be able to make a deal with Hamas, but Hamas maybe at some point has enough interest to stop fighting us because they are financially in a good place. Hamas are outspoken about their agenda, that was the conception, and the Palestinian Authority, they hate us as much, but they just don't say it so openly. And what's the proof for that? Not that I'm saying that this is the proof that I would use, but this is the argument. The pay for slaying. When you have a terrorist or you have that has attacked a civilian population under the slogan or under the idea that they are colonizers, problematic, very problematic, particularly when we are talking about civilians. And then they get paid by the Palestinian Authority. That the funds to the Palestinian Authority keep going. I don't think that they stop in 2019. The fact that maybe police officer hasn't been paying the way they are supposed to also might have to do with the corruption of the Palestinian. There weren't elections there either. For how many years already?
Since Hamas won 2005.
2005. So the Israeli side says, okay, or those that are in the government, right? We are pretty much split half and half in Israel, but the Israeli population is in general is moving farther from the idea of the two-state solution because we are losing hope and we are losing faith in the possibility of create any kind of partnership. And I sincerely wonder, as someone who would like to experience a better world, a world that has more peace, or to work toward that world, how do we turn this around? With all these assumptions that we have from one another, with all the vocabulary, I spoke with you about this. I received several notes from people saying, how are you going to talk with this individual? Did you see his social media? I was like, yes, I did. Did you see what he says about us? I did. And you use vocabulary that I find wrong and dramatically challenging. And we can engage on that. And the expectation also. The expectation from people that spoke with me before this conversation was that we were going to have like a public fight here. I was like, no, he's a really great guy. I spoke with him on Tuesday. Like, why are we going to fight with him? He's really nice. We might disagree over a bunch of things, and we're trying to have a conversation about peace. And I wonder how we do that with all these assumptions, with all this vocabulary, with your vocabulary, and with my vocabulary also.
First of all, we make peace with the other side. So,
you didn't call me enemy.
I mean, this is what they use the term enemy, but I hate that. I feel it's aggressive, but it is. You make peace. I mean, if you were already in peace, then there's no need to make peace, basically. But to talk, like very often in these conversations, Palestinians want a Jew who's almost like PLO as a good Jew, the one we will make peace with. And Israelis want a Palestinian who's like almost wears kippah, in order to see this is the legitimate Palestinian that they want to make peace with. No, you make Palestinians have to make peace with the national movement of the Jewish people, the Zionist movement, and the Jewish people have to make peace with the Palestinian national movement. And the Palestinian national movement has a Palestinian flag, has its own narrative that is different than the Zionist narrative, and that's why we have conflict. That doesn't mean we cannot have peace, because this is about our identities, it's about our history. This is what we needed in order to deal with this conflict and to have unity, to have a national construct Because, by the way, there's an Israeli narrative and there's a Palestinian narrative, but inside each community, there's 100 sub-narratives that contradict each other. But it's part of the war that we have between each other. So you make peace with people you disagree with. For example, the issue of the payment. The PLO, before the Palestinian Authority, used to pay for each family of their fighters who fought a stipend. So after if they die, that this family will live from this stipend. By the way, Israel has the same policy to give stipends to all the victims of this conflict. And this is what the Palestinian Authority does after the PLO. When my grandfather was killed by Israel, and the Israeli army destroyed my family house, it was thanks to this stipend that my grandmother raised 9 children. One of them was sitting in the negotiation table after Oslo with the Israeli counterparts. Now, if there was this money coming to my grandmother to feed her children, to educate her children, to eventually moving them to the city, they would have followed their father's footsteps because, again, there's no vacuum in life. You will go with the easiest way. And the easiest way is some other group will come to my uncles and my father, tell them, you want $100? Go carry this gun from this village to this village, So the Palestinian Authority, and by the way, it's only under Netanyahu that this became an issue. Before, the Israeli security were in favor. Most of the people who were involved went to prison or their parents were killed. The PA, through this money, have most of the cases, you can find exceptions, but in most of the cases, have neutralized these people from the violence because of this money. And if you will go to prison and you are released and you get stipend from the Palestinian Authority, you don't get stipend for free. You get a job. So you have a guaranteed job. So if you were someone carrying M16 and fighting in the refugee camp, and now you have a job to fight those who are in the refugee camp. Like, I have a relative who spent 15 years in prison because he was Hamas. When he was released, he took the file at the Palestinian intelligence of fighting Hamas in the West Bank. And this Netanyahu will never tell you, but actually you will find in Israel not peace doves who will tell you these stories. It is part of the slogans, part of the delegitimization, the narrative that there's no partner for peace. I mean, if there's no partner, why don't you find a partner? Like, invent a partner, because if it's your intention, if you say, I wish to have peace, but they are not, I mean, then if you really wish to have peace, then you must have the ability to find someone or create it from scratch. But the idea, there's no will, there's excuses. These are all excuses. And the PR today can create for you, today the war is PR. If you have seen since the ceasefire, everything is PR. And narratives are being written and shaped, and generally the public believes them. However, people like us should, look in the sand for a way to create peace, not use the leader's style of just always saying there's no excuse. And about like what I post as a Palestinian my narrative. I never say this is everyone's narrative. And I say it because why I have to stand for my people and speak to my people, because I am the competitor of Hamas. My vision inside the Palestinian society is the vision that competes with Hamas. I'm not competing with you, by the way. Like, the worst fight that we are fighting is the fight in our own communities. This is the hardest fights that we are fighting right now. So if I want the Palestinian streets to choose my path, I have to show them that I'm Palestinian too. That I'm one who speaks their language and speak their feelings and speak their concerns. But I'm the one who is telling them, but despite all of that, we have to go for peace. We have to go for humanization. We have to go for building bridges. Of course, this rabbi is not partner, okay, find a rabbi who's a partner. Not say, no, Nico is not a partner, all of them the same, and I can't find you things from social media that confirm. This is, of course, anyone can do this. And that's why we are stuck. That's why we have been doing. And that's why so many people died. And that's why we, in the future, I don't want to be negative, but if we don't change the paradigms that we were using to think, more us outside than even the people inside, because the people inside need to recover, need to process what happened, to come to conclusions that, no, it always seemed impossible until it was done, you know? Like, who knew that France and Germany will be driving without passports throughout Europe, you know, nowadays after... This has to be the spirit. You have to be moved by the aspiration, the life we believe that we deserve. Not excuses, because each side will find enough excuses. I mean, there are people who are actually not from our sides, who use us to even for their own fights, you know, like, oh, what's happening in Europe is because of Muslims, or what's happening in America because of the Zionists. And that's something, it's not serious, it's not honest, it's not at all. The life is never been all people the same. Life has been always spectrum, always different opinions. You have to play on all these differences to make progress. Progress happens. There's no actually, you know, either you're going forward or backward. So this has been always the life, like what makes us different than anybody else? Are Palestinians inherently evil? I would believe no. Are Jews inherently evil? I would believe no, because I lived with Palestinians. I spent so much time with Jews, and I lived in Europe. I traveled all over the world. There's nothing special about us. We're just traumatized. We're just living in a radical reality, and radical realities produce radical consequences. But we remember the times when people used to work together. I watch documentaries because I'm too young for that, when people used to go to each other's weddings. It's the same people, same genetics, same. So what changed? What radicalized them? And what we are doing to de-radicalize them? But to use this as excuses is bad faith. Let's assume everyone in Israel is radical and everyone in Palestine is radical. Despite that, I would be seeking to change. Not to condemn, it's easy to condemn, okay, like all of them the same. This is shooting yourself in the feet, because anyway, we are desperate, like our safety, our quality of life, and our future makes us actually look in the most random places for hope and for a reason, than to just find something to shame someone, to cancel people.
That's a beautiful point. Yeah, I'll tell you a quick story. So some people have heard a part of that story here. So I made Aliyah, immigrated to Israel from Argentina, and by the same time that I made Aliyah, another friend of mine who was a part of our youth movement made Aliyah. She went to Jerusalem, and I went to Haifa. 3 months into being in Jerusalem, she saw Arabs everywhere, and she was very unhappy by that situation. I went to Haifa, and I actually saw Arabs everywhere also, but I was pretty excited about that situation. Now, the first and most important difference was that I was in Haifa, and she was in Jerusalem. The vibe was absolutely different. The approach was absolutely different. And, you know, we lived together in the dorms. I have a friend, Ali. There was a patio in the Meonot, in the dorms in Haifa University, and everybody smoked. But Ali didn't. And so we would come together at night. He always sat with the tea, and everybody was smoking. And we were all Jews. The majority of us were Jews, and Ali was sitting there, and we were actually very good friends. And he would, from time to time, say, So that's how you try to resolve the demographic problem, by smoking around me. And so we were able even to make jokes that in Jerusalem nobody would make. And fast forward a few months into university, a friend of mine, a fellow Jew, says to me, look, there's not enough Arabic culture in Haifa University. We need more Arabic culture. We are creating a group, Badil, which means alternativa or alternative, to advocate for Arabic culture in the university. Would you like to join? And my Hebrew was, not something, and I was happy with the interchange, and I was learning about all cultures there, and Arabic was another one that I was trying to get to know. It was like, should be more culture. Anyway, I get into that meeting, and everybody are sitting around the table, and everybody are introducing themselves, and they were all partisan. And the parties were like a Hadash, which is like a communist party in Israel, and there were some merits, and at some point, maybe there was some ballad there also, and at some point, when it's my turn, I say, I'm Nico, and I am a Zionist. And there was silence, like really, really silent. It got painfully silent. And my friend Uri looked at me like, you're on your own, buddy. Like it's kind of, I'm from Hadash and from the Communist Party. Good luck to you. The big guy, run. And Fadi, who later on became a dear friend, looked at me and said, like, Nico, we might have an understanding that is different from what you mean when you say that you're a Zionist. When you say that you're a Zionist, what do you mean? And I said, well, I mean that the Jews should have a state, and it should be in this place. And was very basic answer. And he says to me, and do you mean that I cannot live in that state? I was like, no, that you're out of your mind. We're here to bring Arabic culture into university. And do you mean that we have do you mean that we don't have a right to live in that state? I was like, no, I just think that the Jews need to be able to have a state. All those things, I don't support them. And I was clueless, because I grew up in a Zionist movement that didn't have those kind of conversations of what it means to be the other, or just in a very loving environment that wasn't occupied discriminating or trying to alienate otherness. And so he says to me, look, most of us have a very different understanding of what Zionism means. Thank you for clarifying that. And that was it. And since everything, I bettered my explanation of what that meant to me, or what it meant to be a Zionist for me. But I kept saying that I'm a Zionist, and I am a Zionist. And I think that helped me a lot to interact with people later on in my life. So all this to say, like, when you tell your story, and there's a ton of people here, that I don't know how many times those that are sitting here met a Palestinian, besides the caricature of a Palestinian. So they might have the possibility to say, we met a guy, and this is who he is. This is his story. This is how he understands his identity. So would you mind?
Very easy topic. Listen, so, yeah, I need one. You know, when you don't know something, you're like, I started by saying as a child, I was scared from the word Jew. You know, it was for me something scary. I didn't even link it to people I didn't think it was Like, you have Christians, you have Jews, you have... it was something scary because of how a child understands the word. Zionist, when I was teenager, the way I understood Zionist, through the stories of the Palestinians and the experience of the Palestinians, not through the stories of my friend who his father and mother escaped Poland through Polonia and Italy and came to like airport in the north of Israel and escaped and so on. So people have different experiences with the same term, but also same term means for, you have in Israel like how many Zionist political party? Each group, I mean, your interpretation of Zionism is very much different than Smotrich's interpretation of Zionism.
Have some common denominators.
Of course. They have some, of course. Yeah, but what it matters to me is that I make peace with Zionists. I'm not Zionist. And this goes both ways. I have to respect that Zionism for you means something different, and I'll take you literally about what you say about your definitions of Zionism. So if you say Zionism is inclusive, I will hold you accountable if you become not inclusive. Meanwhile, you have to also accept me as a Palestinian national movement, and we have to figure the future together. Now, in the conversations happening around these terms, it's very much people, the same as if there's partner or not partner. The intention is to shame. The intention is to blame. The intention is to condemn it. But the truth is, like, no one actually ever sat to listen what Zionism means for Jews. I mean, I respect what Zionism means for Jews. I also respect that my people experience with Zionism is not as fancy as Jewish experience with Zionism, and that doesn't prevent us from moving forward. So this is the point, and I wish people in these conversations learn how to navigate these things. And the way when I used to work with Palestinian and Jewish kids, I was telling them, when you talk about something, don't speak as if it's the truth. Say, my experience with something. My experience with, I don't know, Free Palestine is that I want the occupation to be removed. But don't get mad at an Israeli who say Free Palestine means, scary thing. Like, that can be both true, It can be both true. It depends who said it. It depends which side are you. But single truth is dangerous. Single truth means if you do not accept my terms of reference, then we can't talk, And then when it happened that inside the same family nowadays, they don't agree about any terms anymore, So how we can live and have conversation and make progress despite our differences is that we have to respect.
And how you do that? And then we're going to ask you, when I open it for a few questions. But look, I would vote for that statement, but I struggle with that statement because when you say Free Palestine, like, I can go with you. But then, and you speak about your personal experience, but when you say, I don't know, that Israel is a genocidal state, like, I get the horrendous amount of death that is going on in Gaza. Like, I completely get it. But genocide is not an experience thing. It's a term that has a very specific connotation and a very specific definition. And then there, I'm not going. I can go to the place in which you define your identity with whatever terminology you want, but then when we use whatever terminology we want to define what's taking place, that is people, I learned from a beloved person this week, that's the weaponizing of language. And it's done by all parties. And so how do we start disarming ourselves also while owning our terminology?
Thank you for asking this. I think another issue we have, and not only about Israel-Palestine, actually in our polarized world nowadays, is to take things out of proportion. Saying what's happening, if you are a Palestinian from Gaza, and you go to the ICC and say what happened to me is genocide, it's like you going now to the court and say here, what happened from Hamze is violation to my rights. You have the right to go to the court and do that, and have the right to defend myself, and the judge, you know. But to say Israel is a genocidal state, that's exploitation of what's happening in Gaza to delegitimize Israel. And that's done not by me and not by many of my fellow Palestinian activists who come from the same political vision.
That's how my friends read you, by the way.
What?
That's how my friends read you.
Well, There was a philosopher who said between what I said and meant and what you heard and understood, the truth was lost.
Okay.
I know how to say literally, Israel is a genocidal state. I know how to type it, and I could have said it. So I'm not responsible, because I get every day messages from Palestinians and Israelis. When I say, you know, this shouldn't have happened to there was a guy who was released from Gaza, his family might have been killed, was kidnapped in Gaza. I said, shouldn't have been allowed under any circumstances to kidnap women and children. Many people say, oh, you mean so only Israel can kill Palestinians? I haven't said that. So people always, because of their insecurities and because of their memory and because of everything that's going on in their life, understand, and I'm sure it happened in your personal life, that you said
Never
something.
happened to me.
Never happened to you. Lucky you. Anyway.
Okay, it happens to me.
Yeah. But
knock you off like.
Yeah. Will be always this case from normal people, and it doesn't bother me. I wish it's not the case, but the leaders we have, the people who claim to be intellectually capable of leading spaces about this situation, they should understand better communication skills. They should understand better that you should always follow up a question if you misunderstood something. Like, this is kind of leadership skills that without them, nothing move on between anyone and anything. So every time people will speak and be misunderstood, we have to stop the conversation. No, what we need to work on is to give people, especially the new generation of leaders in Israel and Palestine, the ability to not be intimidated when they sit with the other side and they say something not 100% exactly like what they meant. Because at the end of the day, I was born in the West Bank, and my fellow Israeli was born in Israel. They were from that side, I was from that side. They went to Jewish school, Israeli schools, or Zionist school, whatever. Their grandparents survived the Holocaust. It's totally different mechanism of mind and feelings and memories and stories. So these things will always happen. But what I'm saying is that despite all of that, we have to develop the ability to be resilient. Because I would suffer in terminologies, and I wish to suffer in terminologies and not suffer in bombs and blood and people entering our houses and airstrikes. And if we are so fragile to not be able to handle conversations because you might have meant something I didn't understand, then we have to face the consequences of not talking, the consequences of claiming that there's no partner, the consequences of saying all the other side don't like us, and I found the evidence. And no matter how much counter evidence you bring them, they have no space to open. That's a choice to make. And our people have made this choice pretty much all the time in the past. But were they really good to themselves and to their children? I mean, are we really so selfish to not make these compromises so we pass this conflict to our children? I'm serious. I'm honestly, like, my son lives in Italy for a reason, because I would be so happy if he doesn't identify with that region anymore, because I love him so much that he might have a happier life, you know? But it's not the case. He's like, following the news, I was telling you when I told him I'm coming to synagogue. But really, like, there's a sense of responsibility. Like, why people behave with luxury, act with luxury? No, if you're not a perfect partner, no. Okay, I don't need you. We're not in this situation. And we are in a crisis. And if all what happened did not open us, then I'm sad. People have died in vain. People have died in vain. And every sacrifice, whether emotional, human, financial, gone for nothing. And we are faced with even more darker times. So this is the point. Everything you say is what we carry from the past, and we have to question and challenge everything, because these things did not serve us, did not keep us safe.
We'll take We'll take 3 questions. Shanda, you want to help with this? That would be great.
Thank you. So you spoke about external forces, the Islamic Hezbollah and Iran, etc., and what's happening here in college campuses. So there's a lot of forces into the region. Do you think there is a chance that forces like, for example, the Saudi Arabia agreement that will or will not happen, do you think that has a chance to force our people? So instead of, I see you as a unicorn. I don't know how many others like you there are on the Palestinian side. I know there are, the peace movement in Israel has grown much smaller since October 7th, unfortunately. And can that region be forced from an external place to go on a route of peace? What do you think?
Thank you. It's a fact that the crazy people we have are not operating on their own. They have very powerful friends around the world, both in Israel and both in Palestine. They're well funded, and you could see whenever they make fundraising, hundreds of thousands of dollars quickly. Sometimes even to support one guy who was even arrested by the Israeli police because he's too terrorist for even the Israeli police. And like a settler, for example, and see they raised $200,000 in 24 hours. Like, how this possible? Because there are people here who are happy about these things. And if you are Hamas, then Iran will give you the cash. Saudi Arabia believes in geopolitics and interest. Saudi Arabia have shifted under MBS from a kingdom that is based on religious authority to a kingdom that is based on economic power. And for that, they need stability in the region. It's a national interest for them. And I have sat with the Saudi official a couple of months ago. He told me literally, you Israelis and Palestinians choose to be this way. It's your fault. We're not going to come to save you. However, whenever our interest aligns, and we're not a charity, we're no charity, if you're going to collaborate and listen to us as we listen to you, we might find something. So this is the attitude of Saudi Arabia. But I would rather deal with such actors in the world who are working out of interest, not ideology, because there's a lot of interest for everyone. In unity, in peace, everyone makes profit. In the current situation, everyone's making losses. So Saudi Arabia is a promising situation now because they have the interest and desire for stability in the Middle East. And we see this is through their attitude, not only with the Israelis and Palestinians, but also with the Lebanese and the Syrians. I hope they will convince President Trump to present a viable plan and that we will be able to rally as many Israelis and Palestinians behind it and the international community. And it will be good for everyone. It will be I mean, it will be a beginning of healing, because the day of the agreement is the first day of peace, but then the work starts to heal all the consequences of conflict and trust building and de-radicalization and all of that. It's crazy that we all dependent on Trump and MBS right now. It's really, and that's why I'm not attacking Trump. Like, no matter what Trump does in America, I'm not going to criticize him honestly, because I wish in this case and this time he does something reasonable, because he can deliver it. He can deliver it. Not every president can deliver, but if this guy wants it, he can deliver it. And it will be the best thing will happen to Jews and Palestinians there and here and everywhere. So let's cross fingers.
You have messianic hopes on Trump.
Yeah,
You should say
I do.
Okay.
I'm so desperate. I'm so desperate. This is the fact. Yeah.
Hi, my name's Cormac, and I'm a junior in high school, and I'm on social media a lot, and I mean a lot. So when I'm on Instagram, I see these really, really harsh protests on college campuses, especially in California. And this is like a two-part question. These protesters who are protesting for Palestine, although they're really violent, do they, with the ones you've met, have the truest intention at heart? And then, I'm going to college campuses soon. I'm at Torrem. I'm going to be in college. And how can I be a productive member of my society and be like you and engage in conversations that can benefit society rather than push it back?
Thank you. What's happening in the college campuses around the world is a mix of things. There are far left, anti-system, anti-capitalism, anti-imperialism, historical Western left, that now see the Palestinian cause as a card that strengthens their general agenda. So what's happening, in my opinion, is that they're using us for their agenda, which I wish the other way around, that we Palestinians could use them for our agenda. Now, this is what's happening. For example, they will invite a Palestinian only if he agrees 100% with their agenda. I was going to a campus in the UK, and a professor invited me, and I was so thrilled that I'm going. It's like to be a Palestinian and to earn a voice, it's not easy. And then the pro-Palestine at campus reached out to me and told me I'm only allowed to come if I say I'm anti-capitalism, anti-imperialism, anti-Zionist entity. And I was like, these are not my problems. This is your problems. I'm coming to talk about my problem as Palestinian from Palestine. My family is there, and we have totally different issues here. Then they told me I'm not welcomed. I still went, and I had to go through to be escorted by security to get in and out. And it was so sad for me that I thought, like the pro-Israel will be against me coming, which in other cases was the case. I tell you my advice about college campuses. Many students do things to show off. And in order to be fancy, you have to be radical, you have to memorize some words that you can throw so you intimidate the others. This is not moved by intention to make the world a better place. This is moved to prove that your ideology or your group is better than the others. Don't engage in these kind of things, because it will be a waste of your time and your energy, and it might radicalize you. If there's someone genuine, even though 100% disagrees with you, and this is actually the best cases to make dialogue with these people, but you feel that they moved by genuinely fears and genuine understanding of the current status quo. You engage with this kind of people, engage, both ways engage means like you listen and also you speak, because these kind of interactions worth it. And you can't imagine what changes in you and in people when you engage in such conversations. But don't get trapped in these just left-right football match. You know, you have to stand with team A or team B, and your side is pure and the other side is evil. This is not the truth. This is a waste of time. This is against enlightenment, against critical thinking, against everything they will teach you in college. I don't know why they don't internalize it in the academia. It's like it's a dictatorship. If you say something that might slightly contradict certain ideology, you are like idiot, bad person, whatever. Don't be intimidated also by these accusations. Follow your own journey of knowledge, of study, read books that the other side read also, not only books from your side, and follow your own truth and be open to others.
Thank you so much. My name is Greg Castleman. I'm from San Francisco, and my mom, Doreen Castleman, invited me to come down here to hear this today, and I'm very appreciative. So I just firstly want to say thank you to everyone who made this possible. I have so much I want to say, and I can't say it, but I want to ask a genuine question from my heart, which is, what can American Jews do to pursue this path towards a peace that we're all seeing, that we all believe in? I think some people in the room are Israelis and some people are American Jews, and there's a difference between the two. So what can American Jews do to advocate for peace and to be a part of this solution?
Thank you for this question. I mean, not only American Jews, all Americans, Palestinian Americans too, should not be tribal about this conflict. Support in Israel the politics that aligns with your values. Because imagine, and when Palestine the same, like I will use the Palestinian example. Imagine you are just pro-Palestine no matter what, no matter who the Palestinians are. Then imagine Hamas win. All Palestinians like me have to leave Palestine, you know, like, no, you support Palestine that is liberal, democratic, peaceful, moved by values of shared humanity and all of that. The same, you support this type of Israel. Israel that respects its borders, that is equal, that is democratic, that there's division in power, like the things that you wish America to be, for example, you know? This is the role of the diaspora. That's when I speak to pro-Palestine and the Palestinian diaspora here, I say, you know, you are being so stingy because you know many things we do are wrong, and you know it, and you excuse us. If you don't tell us, if you are not, we are there isolated, we are there in the heart of the conflict, we don't see always things straight. But if you are from outside, who happen to be lucky and privileged to be comfortable, to learn and to expand and to grow, and you don't tell us when we are wrong, then you're not friend. You're not friend. True friend will say, you know, guys, you have been doing this for like ever. Why you think repeating it will change? I mean, tell us this feedback. And, you know, some maybe will say you are not friend because you're asking questions, but you're actually a friend. And treat the whole land as a ship. Children in one side will not be okay if the children on the other side are not okay. Literally. Whether we like it or not, you cannot close a hole on the left side of the ship and leave a hole on the other side of the ship. There will be no pragmatic Israel without pragmatic Palestine. There will be no liberal democracy in Israel without liberal democracy in Palestine. You see the radicals, each crisis they emerge stronger because they're actually helping each other by enforcing the same mechanisms that empower their business model. And the same, if there is a stronger and more mature national movement in Israel or in Palestine that is peace-oriented, future-oriented, living in the reality, not in ideology, if it exists on one side, it will naturally invent it on the other side, just because it's in the same ecosystem. So this is the rule of the Americans in general, is to be part of the solution. We don't need more crazy people there. We have enough crazy people. Any crazy American, please don't get involved in this conflict. Yeah.
Hello, my name is Greg. Thank you for coming. I have a kind of a yes/no question.
No.
It's not for you, Nico.
That's why I say no.
Let's pretend that I'm the ultimate authority in Israel to make a peace plan with Palestinians, and you are my counterpart, ultimate authority. I offer you this, a state, all of the West Bank. I dismantle the settlements, all of Gaza, parts of Jerusalem, large parts of Jerusalem. No right of return for Palestinians to Akko and Haifa and Ashkelon. Yes or no?
Yes, and? No.
Thank you. Yes.
yeah,
He
yeah.
said yes.
Yes, no, seriously.
Very few would say yes.
Seriously,
the
yes.
right of return of Palestinians is the most divisive
Yeah.
issue.
Because we ask long questions. I mean, do these people want to return? The majority don't, but the majority want a solution. I mean, the Palestinians who left Haifa and Akko and all the north and ended up in Lebanon, which, by the way, the Christians there wanted to be also like the Zionists, want to have their own state, and they saw all the Muslims coming. Until now, they deny them even most of the jobs. Until now, they're living in a refugee camp. We're all responsible to also solve their issue. Because if we ignore them, they will make their own national movement and come to be a nightmare for all of us. So, yes, and we have to tackle each issue, not only the refugees only. I mean, even if there is a group in Israel that was extremely marginalized during this conflict and feel injustice for the solution, whatever, we have to address people's needs if we really want to close all the holes. And this will not happen overnight, but this should be the intention. Abandoning people, leaving a group of people with a sense of injustice is problematic for security, problematic for everything, you know? So this is the attitude should be. And there was an interview with Arafat in the 89, I think, with BBC, and about the issue of refugees. He said, I don't want the refugee to come back, but I want the refugees to have the solution, their situation solved. And he mentioned Lebanon and Syria at that time, because al-Assad regime was very brutal to the Palestinians too. And also he said, I want the rich Palestinians around the world to come and invest in Palestine. So this was very pragmatic, something you can work with. But to make it white and black, it's radicalizing, you know? We say, either they are part of the problem, part of the solution or not, take it or leave it. I mean, I will take it because this is me, but this is not how people think, you know?
There is the last historical portion of the previous one, we read about Pharaoh, the king of Egypt, which is in Hebrew, in Hebrew, Mitzrayim comes from the word tsar, narrowness. So it's the king of narrowness, and it's kind of a fun idea to think about the king of narrowness being the ultimate other. And an interesting possibility is to use the metaphor of the king of narrowness as a mirror and try to realize when are we the kings or the queens or the masters of narrowness. And what we hear about Pharaoh is that he hardened his heart. And then God hardened his heart. We grow. Once we enter the path of narrowness, we grow in our narrowness. It's like the path of nature, or the way of nature, is that if you start becoming narrow, if you start hating, if you start dehumanizing the other, you often grow in those paths. And an important challenge is to expand ourselves. And part of the idea behind inviting you is this understanding that we don't want to be the masters of narrowness. Like even when some of the statuses in social media are challenging, or very challenging. You're not a status in social media. You are a human being with a story, with a past, and hopefully with a future that will be better than that past. And I think that the exercise that we all need to do is look at ourselves as the masters of narrowness and try to expand our perspective. And I want to tell you that your presence here is very expanding to me, and I believe to many others. I want to ask you, any of the work that you have done over the last couple of years, or since October 7th, have expanded you, have expanded your perspective? Like, I'm curious about what you have learned.
When I started when I was 17 years old to be involved in dialogue. I was very narrow. I was so picky. If the Jew is Zionist, I'm not gonna talk to him. You know, it has to be non-Zionist, and you learn and you expand, there's nothing wrong about learning and expanding, and that's why we shouldn't cancel people because they're not like us. After October 7th, and I co-created an organization that was called Yalla. It was once the biggest youth movement in the Middle East, included Israelis, Saudis, Palestinians, and all over the region. And the agenda was peaceful Middle East. I have also noticed this tendency with the people. You know, like we are walking from one space to another, so we do it slowly. We don't risk it all. We don't become open also all the time. We open slowly, as long as we have the courage to stay. Because some people from the first meeting, they say, no, he doesn't believe we are angels, so like leave us alone. But those who stay, those who persist, expand, they grow. Because, you know, was a Holocaust survivor, Benjamin Franklin, he said, when you can't change the world, you change yourself. But not you change yourself by becoming more closed. No, by opening, by trying to investigate why people do what they do, behave the way they behave. Because ultimately we live with these people, you know? It's not, we have to. And after October 7th, it was even more challenging. How to watch my friends being killed in Gaza, but also seeing in the UK Jewish students in schools being harassed by other students, and the teacher calls me, come talk to the students. And I felt I'm responsible. I'm responsible because this is wrong what's happening to the Jewish. I mean, it's not our tribe against your tribe. It's some crazy troublemakers that we have to contain by better vigilance, by better arguments and better wisdom. And you have to grow to be able to mourn your friends that killed in Gaza and still go and talk to the people who think they're doing good to Palestine by harassing their Jewish classmate, to ask them very important questions. Who benefit when your Jewish classmate is uncomfortable? Who benefit? And then you find the one who benefit are the bad people. are the right-wingers, are the supremacists, are the Islamists, are the people that we all don't like. So that's a growth. It was not easy, but also it got me closer to truth in life. I mean, then I know that even with non-political issues, I'm able to make a step further in trying to understand and trying to be helpful, trying to be someone who's containing the fire, not expanding it.
We said that we were going to finish. We said that we were going to sing, right? To finish. We'll do that. So, the guitar. Right? I got your lyrics.
Cool. How we will do it?
We'll see. Yeah, I have it in Hebrew and in Arabic. If someone can help me and distribute a little bit, we'll try. We sing this melody. That's it. It's if you can you read the Arabic lyrics?
Yeah.
And see how that goes.
At least I can read the Arabic one.
You can read Arabic. It's a little bit, you were telling me there's a
Your
bit
Arabic
of,
is awesome.
It's a bit of older Arabic. Can you read?
Yeah, I start.
Yeah.
ربي اشفها وكيها ويشفيها.
So at least that way people hear it once in the right way.
Okay.
Rabbi اشفها وكيها ويشفيها. May we find the healing and the comfort that the world and our region needs so much.
And us.
And we need that too. you.